Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth podcast. This is Wade Borth, your wealth strategist. And today I have a special guest. His name is Ryan Keel, who is a college planning expert. Is that fair to say, Ryan?
I think that's fair to say.
Good. So, and you started a company called College Smart. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Ryan, tell me a little bit about your background. I did have a little bit in the bio stuff, but I'd like for you to tell me the story.
Okay. So I originally started in the financial industry back in 1997. So I was an independent financial advisor, did that for a long time, really loved it. And it was, you can probably relate to this. It was one of those nights where you're laying in bed and you're reading an article online, and then you click a link and another link, and then random articles are popping up. And I found this one, and it was an article geared towards financial advisors, but it was explaining how all the different ways we were using to help clients save and invest for college. But it was explaining what happens to financial aid when the student actually gets there. And at the time, I'd been in the business doing the advising side for 10 years, and I had never seen anything like this. And I wish I would have saved the article because it's lost in the world of Google somewhere now. But it was really cool to learn some new stuff, but it was also embarrassing because I realized we were doing it wrong for almost all of our clients. In fact, when I was looking back at the people we were helping, it was almost like flipping a coin. It was 50-50 whether we were helping them or actually hurting them. There was really no in between. It was, we'd get a good return on their investments, but sometimes we were losing them more financial aid than they were making on their investments because we just didn't know the connection between the two. And this was also back when AOL was popular. So the internet, there really wasn't any help online for it. So I had to go to Barnes and Noble every year and read the same book that would come out.
You actually read a paperback book?
Yeah. Yep. My shelf is just a line of them going back from 2007.
So, well, I want to dig into that a little bit more because some of the things you've shared are right in line with my thought process. And I've always known this. We at Sage Wealth Strategy, and again, if anybody wants to hop on our website, just go to Sage Wealth Strategy with a Y at the end, singular.com. Take a look at our podcast, take a look at our website. But in there, we talk a lot about retirement planning. And so a lot of the retirement planning does exactly the same thing. It talks about this accumulation phase, but rarely does anybody ever talk about the distribution phase, which at the end of the day, that's ultimately what you want to have happen is a guaranteed distribution all throughout your lifetime. Well, in college planning, it's the same way. People want to have dollars available in the most efficient way possible. But people rarely look at the consequences of what they're doing up front as far as the distribution phase goes. So I think it's pretty fair to say there's a real direct correlation between the two, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's really interesting, just the vast difference in the advice you can get out there. But yeah, you're right. It's the accumulation phase is almost, I hate to say it, but that's the easy part.
Right.
It's the figuring out the best way to do the distribution. That's where it's trickier.
Yeah. Tell me, just touch on some of what you were saying, some of the mistakes were causing more harm. Ultimately, I think my belief system is that, there's knowledge in all of us. We've been instilled with the knowledge that we need to do things in our job. My job is to empower people to discover what that knowledge is and to use it going forward. But there's also a lot of noise out there in the marketplace. And that noise can confuse us. If you think about it from a gardening standpoint, that could be the weeds in your garden. There's all that noise that comes out. So give me some of your experiences. What were some of the challenges? What were some of the things that you said personally that you go look back and go, it was a 50-50 or coin flip if we're doing more harm or doing more good? Because again, our job is really to do no harm. Ultimately, that's what we want to do, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's this, some of them were just these glaring things. It's almost like doing your taxes. Once you know the rules, you just follow them and you try and take the deductions you can, and just knowing how to position money sometimes. But a really good example is working with families who inherited some stock, maybe from the grandparents, and it went to the parents, or maybe it was earmarked for college or just whatever they wanted to use it for. But it was very popular. It probably is still fairly popular to recommend putting that type of investment in the kid's name, if it's paying a dividend, especially, just so you can save a couple $100s a year on taxes with the lower tax bracket. But what happens is the financial aid formula looks at things a lot more harshly if they're in the kid's name compared to the parent's name. So on paper, it looked like a really good idea. So CPAs and advisors were advising people to do this. You save a little bit of money, but then years down the road, when the student goes to school, the colleges see that big chunk of money in a taxable account in the kid's name, and they just rub their hands together, and all of a sudden you don't get any need-based financial aid. So it's just not really a shell game, but it's knowing how to title things to qualify for the most aid.
Yeah. So it goes back to probably one of the, I was just thinking, I was telling Ryan earlier, just as we got on, that my 14-year-old son, I just remember first time you play tic-tac-toe with children. It's easy to beat somebody when they don't know the rules of the game or they don't know the techniques of the game. But once they understand the techniques of the game, then they're on the same playing field. And this is just one of those where you're trying to try to empower others to understand what the rules of the game are.
Right. Yeah. And like you mentioned, with just the weeds, that whole analogy, there's so much different advice out there. Some is mediocre, some is helpful, but only to a small subset of people. And some is just someone trying to sell you something, I guess. And it's not very rarely a good idea.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a lot of what I do is similar to what I did as an advisor, was kind of defense for my clients, explaining how things work, preventing them from making mistakes, whether it's buying something they don't need or something that would be detrimental to what they're trying to do, or just getting through the whole process, knowing what's going on so they don't feel like they're missing out on anything.
Yeah. So it really goes back. I mean, it's the same thing that we run in my world, where we're talking with people about individual strategies and thought process and how they think about money, and getting to recognize maybe the things that they already know, but they're not willing to accept yet, because there is so much what I call financial noise out there. There's a lot of financial entertainers that are out there, and they're giving very general advice for all the people that are out there. And so when that happens, at least in my world, people will say, said this, or this person on the TV or the radio said to do this, without having any idea about what the client's situation is about. And I just kind of shake my head. I'm like, you realize that there are people out there that are going to give advice for millions of listeners, and they haven't specialized it to what your situation is.
Right. Yeah. They have to be so generic. And anytime they move beyond that realm, it quickly breaks down.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, especially because is there a lot of restrictions as far as what your income is? Things change, obviously, as your income goes up or as your assets appreciate, or if you have assets that are going to show on the FAFSA. There's just, to me, when I'm starting to look at this, there's so many different facets of, I don't want to say hiding money. It's just how you do things are as important as what you do. Is that fair to say?
Yes, exactly. There's three main moving parts, which make it every family a unique, fun puzzle to work with. It's the family finances. So that's what the FAFSA is going to look at. And then for about 200 of the more elite schools, they have a separate formula that they use for their own money. So sometimes you can be doing an excellent planning job for, say, a state school, but then if the student goes to a more expensive one where they look at things differently, it can backfire for you. So really the family finances is where we start every time. Even if, like in your situation, an 8th grader, we would run you through FAFSA, pretending he's going to go to college the next year, and then also run you through financial aid at maybe a variety of regional schools, so you can see what it actually cost you instead of looking at the sticker price. The second major part of this is the student themselves. So that's their resume, what they've been doing through their college years, groups, sports, things like that. GPA and test scores are still huge. I'm crossing my fingers that test scores just eventually go away because they don't really accurately reflect the student. So that's a whole nother thing to start looking at. Actually, you're at prime time to start looking at that when your student's going into college or to high school. And an interesting part there is almost all schools report on the metrics they care about in incoming freshmen. So you can find that there's a free website called collegedata.com. And you can go in and they'll list, say, 15 different metrics like GPA, test score, essay, community involvement. Sometimes it's religion or geographic location, or if they're the first college student in their family. But then they also rank how important it is. So it'll be considered strongly, considered a little bit, or not at all. So you can get a good idea of what colleges care about to help your student build that resume. Even though I always have to put the asterisk, never have them do stuff that they don't want to do just to build a resume.
So is that specific to each college, or is that specific to just in general? So you could pick a college and say, here's maybe my college, my alma mater, and this was important to them. This is how my son would line up to go there.
Yeah, there are some generalities. Like state schools will care about fewer things than, say, a private school.
Okay.
But even among, like locally with NDSU, compared to MSUM. MSUM actually looks at more things than NDSU does. So it can be wildly different. So it's hard to do some planning for that. And one of the side tips there is schools care more about somebody doing, like being involved in an organization and doing something beyond just being a member, rather than having them be in 10 different groups. So I like to use, I do a lot with pet rescue, so I like to use that as an example. Like if you volunteer to go walk dogs, that is fantastic. It looks good on your resume. But if you actually planned and ran like a big fundraising event for them, like that shows initiative, and it shows something that you're going deeper into it than just being a volunteer. That's something that a lot of schools care about.
Sure. So it's about maybe more of a leadership role versus just a participation role that they look at. They look at depth of participation, not so much the broadness of the participation.
That's a great way to explain it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'll just briefly throw out the third one of the moving parts that's really important, and probably the most important when it's coming to what you're actually going to pay, is the school selection, which kind of makes sense, but I also encourage everybody to ignore sticker price. Because when I went through the process, I went to a private high school, if you're local at Oak Grove, and then instead of going to Concordia, the private Lutheran college in town, which at the time was $36,000 compared to $12,000 at NDSU, I just didn't think I could afford it. And now I know I probably could have paid less to go there than I did for NDSU.
So, well, and I'll use the same analogy when I was looking at, this is 150 years ago, when I was looking at going to college, I went to Jamestown College and now University of Jamestown. But when I actually did the comparison, it was because of all the foundational aid and financial aid through University of Jamestown versus NDSU, it was actually less expensive for me to go there. Not by a lot, but still a little bit less expensive. But when you look at the straight sticker, I'm just, to your point, when you looked at the sticker to begin with, people say, oh, I can't afford to go there. And when I looked at it and actually did the numbers, it was pretty much all the same. If I looked at UND, NDSU, all the state schools plus they're all pretty much in the same ballpark. And
one of the other things to look at that most people don't really think about right away, and if you try and find it online, it can be tricky, is to look at the graduation rates. So if you're looking at, I pick on NDSU a little bit because I went there, but the last I looked, they had a 30-something% four-year graduation rate, whereas they're just not really geared for 4 and out as much as private schools are. Mm-hmm. So you can end up paying more per year to go to a private school, but if you're out in 4, it's the overall cost of the degree rather than the annual cost.
I think, and I don't know that this is still the case, but I think at one time I know that, like, for example, I'll pick on Jamestown just because that's where I went. They had a 4-year guarantee. If you followed their track, you could be out in 4 years.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I love seeing that because then they're committed to making sure you take the right classes and you're not getting to your senior year and there's a class that only is offered every other year or something, or a prereq you didn't know about.
Right. And if you think about it, you're not just the loss of that extra year of going to school, but the loss of income. You think about if you spend an extra year in school and you didn't earn a $30,000 salary for 1 year, and you take that over the next, say, 50 years, what is that? What's the value of that having to go 1 extra year? It's huge.
Right.
It's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
Especially you're looking at not just that first year, but looking at the last year you'd be working. That's the extra one that you got.
Right. Or if you said, hey, I'm going to work, I'm going to take all that money. Instead of going to college, I'm going to work that 1 year, make $30,000, stick it away at, say, a 2 or 3% interest rate.
Yeah.
What would that be when you die at age 85, 90, 95 years old? But that's what we call the time value of money, the lost opportunity cost of going that extra year. I'll touch on this real quick. So just the 3 points of the FAFSA, and then also some of the elite schools have some of their own requirements that you would do. And that's something you would work with as a student and parents to figure out what those are or how that affects them.
We have a really kind of structured process where we go through, there's 3 steps in each of the 3 categories. So family finances, student development, and then school selection. And we go through that until you get to their senior year of high school. And that's when we start looking at the different schools a little bit in more detail. But it's easy to start planning ahead to get a really good idea of what your costs will be.
And if they want to reach you, how do they reach you? I'll just give them some contact information.
Oh, okay. So they can email me at info@gocollegesmart.com.
Okay. And we'll post that to this podcast as well, the description. And that's your website?
Yes, gocollegesmart.com.
GoCollegeSmart.com. Okay, perfect. As your business, as the price of college is steadily or explosively increased, I don't know how you look at it. Have you found yourself being a lot busier?
Yes. It's interesting because what I do is so little known. People don't know there are college planning specialists who do this work. So every time I meet with somebody, it's talk for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you can just see the light bulb go on, and they're like, oh, that's what you do. No one's ever told us this before. So it's always fun to do those meetings. And it's really been picking up more out of state. And I'm not sure if it has to do with everybody doing the distance learning and doing the Zoom meetings. But yeah, it's getting busier and busier the more people know what I do and get referrals. And it's interesting because anytime the college comes up with a conversation with a past client, like they're the smartest person in the room now because they know how this stuff works. And they, rather than explain it to somebody, which can be difficult, it's a whole telephone game. It just breaks down the more it gets passed on. Most people are just talk to him. Go have him explain what he does, and you'll be happy you did.
And so as I'm thinking about it, you and I are probably going to get together shortly after our podcast here because, again, my son's ending his 8th grade year, going into his freshman year. You said that's a good time to start going through this process. And the reason why we're going to go through the process is just so we can get a better feel. Or we don't have to scramble at the end is what you're saying. So get a feel for what we have to do, what we want to do, what we want to position, that type of thing.
And it's really interesting too, because a lot of people, since they don't know a whole lot about the process, they think they put a pretty big emphasis on scholarships, and they want to be able to find those outside, which you can, but it's not as easy as it used to be able to Google things a little bit easier, but now you're just flooded with advertisements. And I lost my train of thought there.
As far as focusing on scholarships, because this is actually one question I had, and maybe we'll just touch on it now, is that something you help people do? Is, okay, we'll help find scholarships for the student as well, or is that not in your guys' wheelhouse?
That's an interesting area because there used to be people who you would work with one-on-one and they would find scholarships for you. And I think that kind of died out because it's difficult to pay somebody without knowing you're going to get at least that much back. So I did find a business that they do the mentoring and the accountability side of it. So they show people how to find scholarships on their own, and then they give them an app to keep track of things, and then they have a weekly call to check in with the student. But it's really time intensive, so it's really not for everybody.
Sure. And it's not your organization, it's a separate organization that you found.
Right. I do I'll give a good outline of helping people trying to find their own, because it's really split into 2 categories. There's actually 3. There's the school scholarships themselves, which can be a really fun area. Like for your 8th grader, or actually this is probably a little more important for maybe a sophomore or a junior. But if we can see what their GPA is looking, you can estimate what their test score might be for the ACT or SAT. But we can look at all of the maybe regional schools that they look at and what their scholarships require. So by the time they get to being a junior and take that ACT for the first time, say they get a 22, we can pull up the scholarships that are available at the schools they're interested in and see there's a scholarship, but you need a 24. And they have a full year to maybe take some tutoring or something to get that score up to qualify for this money. So it turns into a kind of a fun investment in your time. And then, so there's school specific scholarships. Then when you're looking at outside scholarships, that's where people really want to be able to find some good stuff. But that's really difficult because there's a lot of free national websites you can go to where you sign up and they funnel things to you. A tip for that is to always set up an email address that you don't need scholarships, because they're free because they sell your information and you're going to get bombarded with spam. Those can be helpful, but you're competing with everybody for the $500 Ford scholarship. If you can start local, that's always a better use of everyone's time. So trying to look for the FM Area Foundation, where they work with a lot of nonprofits. They have a page specifically with all the scholarships from those nonprofits. If you can find, this is where the parents can get involved too, and just start asking like their HR department where they work, or if they're involved in any groups or organizations, sometimes they have scholarships. So that's a better use of everybody's time to try and find the lesser known or local ones where there's maybe only 50 people you're competing with, and to never skip the essays, because a lot of people do that. So you're automatically in a better position to get it if you take the test.
As a parent, I'm going to actually encourage people to skip the essay ones because I'll have my son write it. There's a lot less competition.
It's sneaky.
Just to that same point, I look at some of the local scholarships that are around from us, our local credit union. So these are organizations that have money. They want to give out scholarships. It's designed to do that. We're on a rural electric cooperative. There's another one I see coming in the newsletter. And again, none of them are huge. None of them are going to be a full ride, but they can all count.
Yeah, that can be, if you have your students sit down for either, however you want to break it up, like a weekend, spend a couple hours each day, that can be the best part-time job they'll ever have if they do it well and they apply to some good ones or local ones, and just getting a couple, even a $500 one can be definitely worth it.
So, well, interesting. Working with you, explain that investment I'm going to be making working with you. How does that work? Is it something where we start working now and then do we pay on an ongoing basis, or just because that's always a question I know parents have, or people I talk to about college planning is, oh yeah, am I going to get my value back?
Yeah. And that's it can be a tricky question to explain too, because since everybody's situation is unique, we can do a phenomenal job of planning that would save them thousands of dollars in time at a private school. But if they go to like a 2-year or a state school, the financial aid the quality isn't as high, so you're not getting that benefit. But what I would say, so let me just rephrase the question. You're asking how do they know they're getting a benefit out of it or their return on their money?
How do they find value out of it? Obviously, you're not going to work for nothing. When they engage with you, work with you, what do you bring them? What value you bring them?
Okay, I'll start with
versus do nothing.
I'll start with my pricing model.
Yeah.
So it depends on the age of the student. So if they're junior high or below, we do a flat $500 fee for a plan. And for all of our plans, it's basically about a year's worth of work, even though we can probably get it all done in 5 or 6 hours. So junior or a freshman in high school to junior, that's $750. And then for a senior in high school, it's $1,000, just because there's more hands-on with doing the FAFSA and financial aid reviews, things like that. And then once they're in college, it drops back down to $500. And that's a one-time fee up front. And then once you're an existing client, then it just goes to an hourly rate of $100 an hour afterwards to do updates. And there's much less time-intensive things to do. And the benefit for the client is, like I mentioned, we can save people thousands of dollars by qualifying them for more aid. Or helping them find, outside scholarships or things that they didn't know they qualified for. But really, two of the other big things that we help with are time. That you can try and do this on your own, and just from personal experience, how long it took me to learn a lot of these things and sift through the weeds to get to the good advice, that can take dozens of hours if you wanted to go into it. And the other one is just confidence. Once we go through our full plan, you hit all 3 of those main areas and we know what's going on, the parents know that they're making the best decisions they can. And a lot of people come to me just looking to save money, but really once we get into the conversations, they want to set up their student in the best position to get a degree in what they want to do and to move on with their lives afterwards with having as little or no debt as possible. And they want to do it without screwing up their own return.
That's actually another point I had was I wonder, and I think out loud, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of clients about retirement planning and the impact of college. And I don't know that the student nor the parent understand what the real impact on the retirement planning is. Do you have that discussion with them? Just a real quick example. I ran a calculation where I had a student going to school for 5 years at, I think, $25,000 per year. And there's a couple variables, but at the end of the day, that $100,000 of college education cost the parents about $20,000 per year in income from age 65 to 90. It was a huge impact. It's $200, it's $2,000 a month almost. That college, just one student. So that's where I'm at, one kid. But if you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 kids, you wonder why parents are saying, I can't afford to retire after putting kids through college. And if kids understood that, I think they would have a greater appreciation and they would have, I don't say greater appreciation. Maybe a lot of kids have great appreciation, but you don't understand what the real cost is. So maybe you're not taking it maybe as serious as you should be, or not focused, or you say, hey, I want to spend an extra year finding myself. Well, it's an expensive place to find yourself, giving what you're paying and also what your parents have to give up in order to have that happen. So do you have that discussion with them?
And that's why I love to get involved in the process before they're a senior. So I have good example of how it can go the wrong direction, where I ended up starting working with a single parent whose student wanted to go. They lived in Minnesota, but they wanted to go to ASU. That was their dream school. And the parent said, sure, I'll help you pay for it. They just had no idea what that meant. And once they we went through the process, we tried to get him as much financial aid as we can. We tried to do the scholarship search, but it was a ridiculous amount of money for the education they were going to get compared to what they could have gotten had they, not just stayed locally, but regionally, just to stay in state. And that was a huge burden. Like the annual cost that they would have to take out in loans was more than the parent was making almost. And that's something you could prevent by just having those conversations about how much do the parents want to help? Do they want to help? There's a lot of family dynamics we have to work within, because sometimes if the parents paid their way through school, they want their kids to do it. And sometimes if the parents paid their way through school, they don't want their kids to have to do that. Or sometimes one parent is one of each of those, and we have to find that middle ground.
You become a bit of a marriage counselor then.
A little bit, yes. De-stressing everybody is also one of the big benefits of this. One of the things I enjoy doing, especially for the student. And this is fun. I have a lot of fun talks that involve comic books, reading comprehension for young kids, and de-stressing the students when they're senior year. I remember when I went through, the whole question was, where are you going to college? What's your major? And I don't know, I was a business major because I didn't want to let anybody know I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Because that's what the university studies kids did. So what I explain is the difference in the job market now. So I like to explain the difference between specializing and generalizing in their first career when they go through school. So a good example of this is Tiger Woods. He's the definition of a specialist. Like, he was golfing in the womb, and that's what he did, and he makes tons of money doing it. And then Robert Federer, a tennis player, he did the opposite. He played a bunch of different sports and picked his favorite later on in life, and then still went on to be good. So how that translates to the career side is people who specialize, go to school for a job, get that job, they end up making money faster initially. But they found through studies, on average, the people who generalize, and it's the Venn diagram in my head of what you're good at and what you like doing, and you play in that middle area.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that, whatever that degree is in, you get that first job, and hopefully you enjoy it. And you take what you learn from that job, and then you get another job, and you keep moving up, building they call it skill scaffolding. And those people later on in life surpass the specialists, unless you're a brain surgeon or something. But there's all these great side benefits of that too, because they're just happier, they're healthier, they're less stressed, they're more fulfilling careers that go along with it, because you got to stick in what you like doing and what you're good at, which evolves over time. Sure. So you're not interested in the same things at 30 that you are in your maybe mid 40s or something. And you can, plus there's so many jobs that don't exist now that our kids will have.
That's a good point as well. I guess it goes back, and again, I use a lot of agriculture because I'm a farm boy from North Dakota. But it's like a tree that grows real fast. It doesn't have real great foundations. Wind can blow it over. But those people that specialize, like an oak, will spread out great roots. It'll take a lot longer to grow to the sky, but it'll be around in a lot healthier for a lot longer type of thought process.
Right.
So
this kind of makes parents' heads explode a little bit. I've suggested a student take a gap year very seriously 2 different times. Because one of the things that people don't know about financial aid is, they calculate what they call your expected family contribution by looking at your assets and income of the parent and the student. So they come up with this number and say it's $20,000. That means you're responsible for the first $20,000 no matter what school you're going to. And then above that, you just cross your fingers and hope for more aid. But what happens is if you have more than one student in college at the same time, that gets cut in half. So maybe at a state school, you just end up getting more loans, but say at a Concordia or a Gustavus, you end up getting a lot more in grants and scholarships and the free money. So these 2 situations, they had siblings that were 1 year apart. The older one just didn't really have any direction. They were told they needed to go to college, but they didn't know what they wanted to do. They hadn't really done a lot of career exploration or find anything that really stuck with them. So we had them take a gap year and then do some career exploration there. There's a lot of, you can find fun programs online on what to do in your gap year instead of just working at the taco shop or something. So what happens is they get a little direction, they find out something they want to do, and so they're not just at risk of burning out fast and maybe just not going back to school. And then that second student catches up. So both of them are paying less than they would have before. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it saved them money, even though it maybe put off things 1 year for that one student, but it was giving them that foundation rather than trying something just because they were supposed to do it and then hating it and then resenting the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that there used to be an idea that you have to go to school. I think there's a real thought process out, especially in academia or in the high schools today, is that you have to go to school to be successful. And we can point time and time again, that's not always the case. There are a lot of people that haven't gone to college that have turned out to be tremendously successful. The pressure is that you have to go, and then what they do is they end up going, this is just my assumption, they end up going, wasting a couple of years wandering and drifting and either dropping out or extending them. Maybe by the time they figure out what they want to do, now they're 5-6 years into college. How expensive a process was that?
Right. And there's, far too many students who have student loan debt who never finished because, a 2-year school can be a fantastic idea. Or even if you do a trade school, you make a lot of money out of the gate. And if a couple of years down the road, you decide you don't like it anymore, you can always, then you have money to go to school and pay for it.
And have money to go to school, and also much clearer direction, where you want to go.
Exactly.
So you'll be a lot more efficient with that time and the money that you do spend.
It's hard to overstate how important some career exploration can be, and just seeing what's out there and what you like. That can turn a C student in high school into an A student in college if they just find that area.
Oh, and the other is the opposite of that is you could take an A student in high school, and if they have no desire to go to college, they turn into the C student or practically failing student because, again, there's no desire to be there, but they feel obligated. I think there's so much, pressure from our societal pressures to make sure that you have to go to college. Business people that went to trade school and they started a trade, they found what they did, they decided to buy a business. There's so many pathways that I think and I don't know if that's part of your conversation with the students, is this something you really want to do, or is this something you think you should do, you're supposed to do?
Yep. Yeah. We like to explore all the options to make sure that's, the best one. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it may sound weird, but taking that gap year, and I've known students who took that time to travel, they went to Europe, and you always hear stories of the people just wasting time and doing that and partying the whole time. But I know some who have come back with just a really greater appreciation of what they liked, experienced a different country. One of them got into translating because of that. They found a really cool niche of knowing this other language and getting a job at a company who needed that help.
Sure.
There's so much out there. And this is a fun conversation I like to have too. And I go back to the pet rescue as an example. If you love dogs, but you're good at math, that doesn't mean you can't help dogs with math, because there's always nonprofits or companies who need accounting or something that you're good at. It can help open kids' minds of what is available to find that crossover of what they're good at and what they like.
Yeah. And then the other side of the equation is that if they're good at one skill and they can be very successful at it, they can donate a whole lot of money to the causes that really are close to their heart.
Yep, exactly. And you can, that's a very easy way to stay connected to that and have a fulfilling outside of career life.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually led me to the thought of, how about internships? You talking about taking a gap year. Would that be an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to take the year off, and maybe not even an internship, to say, hey, I'm going to go explore this area because I find a lot of interest there. I don't know if it's for me. Is that something you recommend as well?
Yeah, if they can do it in the right way. Sometimes even finding a job you hate it can be very helpful just by eliminating that. And maybe if you can fit in a couple internships over a year, or maybe find one company with different positions that you can try. Yeah, sometimes finding what you love is great, and sometimes finding out what you don't like can be even more important.
Yeah, I think there's some sage wisdom there. Finding out the things you don't like and things that you hate, so you don't go down a pathway, spend time doing it. Okay, so you mentioned earlier in the podcast here too that there were things that you did financially that were mistakes, and we touched on it just a little bit. Can you dig into that a little bit more? I'm just curious, and here's where I come from. I have a couple of thoughts around that. Is that, and again, this is a personal belief, is that I teach clients how to take control of the banking function in their life. So what I mean by that is we want to build up a pool of cash, and then whatever we do in life, we have to finance one way or the other. We either pay cash or we have to pay interest. And so it's one or the other. And so My thought, and I have a lot of clients I've had conversation around this, is look, little Johnny's going to go to school. If he understands what's going on, the fact that we're using our pool of money to send him to school once he gets done, if we would have took a loan from Wells Fargo, for example, we would have paid that back. But we're taking a loan from our family to send you to school, so why wouldn't you pay that back? So we have to teach them, and this is just what I do with my clients, is we have to teach them that you have to love your family more than you love Wells Fargo.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because if you had a loan with Wells Fargo, you would pay it back, right? Not everyone come out of college. There's a lot of people calling for elimination of that debt. But for the most part, if I took a loan, I'm going to be responsible enough, I'm going to pay it back. But if I took money from my family, why wouldn't I have that intent to pay that back? I don't know if you've had that conversation. Is that becoming bigger and bigger in your conversations with families, or?
That does come up sometimes. It's part of it's like a smaller part of the big conversation of knowing how financial aid works. Because really, we go into the planning process real product neutral, and it really comes down to titling a lot of times. If you're going to start young, how is the best way for you to save for college or invest for college? And that comes down to knowing what happens if it's in the kid's name, what happens if it's in the parent's name, what happens if it's in somebody else's name, like grandparents. That can be a very cool planning opportunity because you can do it in a way that it doesn't affect financial aid. Or like annuities or cash value life insurance, that generally is not counted against you on the FAFSA. But if you end up going to one of those like 200 schools I mentioned earlier where they have a second formula, they can look at that and it'll count against you. So it can be tricky planning ahead.
So it's, again, I'm an advocate of, I'm a firm believer that you store your money in properly structured life insurance for a number of different reasons, because you have access to it. You don't have the restrictions. The problem I see with 529s, and I'm not saying they're all wrong or all bad, they're government programs. So anytime a government program, they put their rules on and they can change the rules whenever they want. That's my personal belief. So I believe in taking control of it. When you use the 529s, the issues I see is that if you're not using it for those specific reasons, then you lost all the benefits of having a 529 plan. And it also forces you, and I was told by a different college planner 4 or 5 years ago that dollars in 529s can adversely affect your FAFSA calculation, your family contribution. And she was using a ratio of 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 to 1. For every dollar you have in a 529 in certain situations, you could be increasing your family contributions by $3 for every dollar that you have in a 529. And I don't know if that's true or not. I was going to throw that question at you.
It's specifically if it's in so 529, and this might be just some outdated data that was fixed. So it used to be where it could be in the kid's name, and the FAFSA would look at it there, and then that was 20%. So every $1,000 you had saved in the kid's name, whether it's a taxable account or something like that, or an investment, they would lose $200 in need-based aid. But they'd got rid of that. So it's any 529 is now calculated as a parent asset. So that's a maximum of 5.64%. So roughly, you could say 5%. So every $1,000 you have, you're losing $50 in financial aid. But if you're dealing with bigger dollar amounts, that can snowball on you.
Getting some big numbers when you start having large numbers in 529 plans.
Right. Yeah, those are really great for grandparents if they want to dump a lot of money out of their estate quickly.
And put it into grandparents, have grandparents own the 529?
That can be an interesting strategy because it takes it off the financial aid formula until it's spent. And the way it functions, they look at your taxes 2 years prior. So if you take out money and spend it on the freshman year of school, it'll affect the junior year of college's financial aid. But if you wait until their junior year, 2 years from then, they'll be graduated. So you'd use a grandparent's or an uncle's or a friend's 529 that they have set up for them. Just wait till they're at their junior and senior year to spend it.
So in other words, we've got to jump through some more hoops in order to
yes, it gets very detailed with the planning. So it's a fun puzzle for me.
So the 529 plans, again, now what if you set up a 529 plan? Again, we've been the process of this conditioned thinking, right? So need to put money there. And we don't think beyond that aspect of it. And now we get time to go to college. And now, like you said, we have money built in there. Now it's adversely affecting our financial aid. And then little Johnny goes, yeah, I'm going to start my own business. I'm not going to go to college. What do we do with the 529 plans?
Then you end up getting taxed on the gains, and then there's a 10% penalty on the gains. So it's not disastrous. It's like taking an 8% return and getting a 7.2 and then paying taxes, but it's not ideal, and compliance departments really frown on that. But it's a good example. I don't really recommend specific products for people. I'll explain the differences and then let them or I'll work with their financial advisor to find the best way forward. We are a little lucky in North Dakota. We have a state-owned bank that has the 529 plan, and they have really nice matching. So if there's a newborn, you fill out an account before they turn 1, and you can put in 200, and then you'll get 200 matching. I like to recommend that, but beyond that, it's really situational.
So preferences, if you again, my practice, what we personal belief is that we want you to take control of your assets, not let somebody else have control of your assets.
Right. In that situation, and I guess that plan, that takes, like I mentioned, the money off of the financial aid formula.
Mm-hmm.
It's like cash value life insurance or something like that. Unless it's that one of those 200 schools that look at things more closely.
So it takes it off the FAFSA form, or it's not reported on the FAFSA form. I guess it doesn't take it off. It doesn't have to be there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you could have $10 million in cash value life insurance, and you could still qualify for financial aid if everything else would be there with that kind of cash sitting in a policy.
Possibly, yeah. There's a lot of discretion that financial aid offices have. They can follow up with other questions if they want. They aren't prohibited from that, but most of the schools that just use the FAFSA just use the FAFSA. And that can be a good reason to just do it online.
Do the FAFSA online?
Right. Because I ran into one situation where it was when there's divorced and remarried families, that gets really complicated, or not really complicated. It can actually be some fun opportunities to qualify for more aid. But I know one couple went to the school actually helped them fill out the FAFSA, which I thought was great because it can be annoying and complicated and confusing. But what happened is they were divorced and remarried, and then they had the divorce decree was a 50-50 split to pay for college. So once the school knew that, they decided to look at both families' income. So instead of just one remarried one, it was both of their assets and income. And all of a sudden they didn't get any need-based aid because of that.
That stinks.
Yeah, it was like, I wish you would have talked to me. We could have done this at your kitchen table and avoided that whole thing.
So that actually leads to the question of, again, getting a hold of an expert. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars, big dollars for clients. And if you're not willing to take some time, educate yourself. And it's hard because there's so much misinformation, so much information out there. Some of it. I'm a firm believer that, can I fix my vehicle? I probably could if I read enough, watch enough YouTube videos. But at the end of the day, I take it to a mechanic because he's the expert. And so I guess anybody that's listening to this, if they made it this far, thank you so much. Appreciate that. But I would say get a hold of Ryan. What's your address again? Or how do they get hold of you?
So the email address is info@gocollegesmart.com.
Okay.
And I do have a nice free kind of an intro report that can give you some good starting information. And the website for that is collegequickplan.com.
Collegequickplan.com. Okay. Perfect.
And that can give you your expected family contributions, some school specific info. It's a great way to start because it can give you that baseline of information that you need.
Yeah. It just, as a parent, it feels, and we're not there yet. Maybe, and I said, maybe we should be, obviously, after this conversation, you and I are going to have a conversation. We're going to be starting. It just feels so overwhelming. It's like, where do I start? It just feels tidal wave coming at us. And without help, without people, again, my belief is that I'm here to empower you, but also to be your guide, right? So it's like climbing Mount Everest. We can probably all look at it and look at a map and see how to get there, but who would do it without a guide? And this is, quite frankly, more important because it's large dollars being spent. And then a lot of the questions that maybe as a family dynamic, we don't even know to ask those questions. And we can tap into your expertise and somebody like you that say, hey, this is my experience. This is the 300 times I've been asked the same question, and I haven't thought about asking that question. So there's just so much benefit to working with a professional, working with an expert in the field.
Because what I did is I just floated through the process without asking any questions or doing anything. It just took what everybody gave me. And that's what a lot of families do.
Did you ever think about going back and see what it actually cost you by not doing that? Just from a monetary standpoint. So if I would have had this information back then, we could have saved so many dollars, and I could have, taken that money and put it in savings.
I've never run that number. I do know, like I mentioned, I could have gone to Concordia for less than NDSU based on that.
And you found that out afterwards.
Yeah, years afterwards. After being an advisor for 10 years.
I appreciate your time. I know there's a lot more information. I might have you back on if you don't mind, because I'm sure there's questions that I get before this or after this podcast goes out, and after I've had a chance to share it with some people. And for those that are listening, you can share the podcast, because there's a lot of great information for your family members, your relatives, whoever has a kid that's looking at college. Maybe it's somebody that's saying, I don't know if I'm going to go to college or not. Maybe by visiting with Ryan or listening to this podcast, you can start to formulate a little bit better if that makes sense for you to go to college or not. And if you are planning to go to college, why not start taking some steps now to say, plan what that's going to be, understand it, and then do your best to say, what's the way I can maximize the process as we go through it. So
exactly. It's just like retirement planning. The earlier you start, the better, the more options you have.
It's less of a hill. That's exactly right. But once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Ryan, is there anything you want to end with that we haven't talked about that you think might be helpful to the listener?
Boy, I think we covered most of it. Just don't be overwhelmed by it. That's what we're here for, to help you make sure you're making the best decisions to set up that student to be in their best position to move on.
It's all about optimization and creating the best value for the student, right, the parent. So
exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and we'll be talking to you again, I imagine.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Bye-bye.